and welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar, and we're coming to you here on Friday, November the 15th. Week 11 kicked off in full force last night, and we're going to break down everything that happened in that game, both the game and the fight towards the end of the game, and possible suspensions after that. We're also going to preview the rest of the Week 11 games coming up this Sunday and Monday. And we're also going to talk about Colin Kaepernick's workout Saturday. So we got a jam-packed show with a lot going on. And I see no better way to start than recapping what happened last night on Thursday Night Football. So let's get into it. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. Cleveland wins this one 21-7. Cleveland improves to 4-6 on the year and has won 2 straight. So that's got to feel good for them. And Pittsburgh that was a big kind of a gut punch loss for the Steelers, who were really feeling themselves. They fall to 5-5 and then snaps a 4-game winning streak. I'm just going to talk about the game for the first couple minutes and really get into that, because I feel like the Browns really did a very good job in this game, and I feel like that deserves some praise before we get into the fight and the fallout from that and everything and all the ramifications that come with it. So bear with me for a minute before we get to what everybody is really talking about here today. The Cleveland defense forced Mason Rudolph into the worst game of his career. He got sacked 4 times, threw 4 interceptions, and the defense only gave up 1 touchdown. So it might have been, the Cleveland defense's best game of the year, really. Linebacker Joe Schubert. I'm butchering that name, but bear with me. Had an insane game, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, 2 interceptions, and 4 passes defended. He was a wrecking ball in the middle of the field. In fact, I think he caught the last interception in the game that set up Cleveland's last touchdown for this one. Cleveland's defense played great. They had Mason Rudolph, frazzled all night. The Cleveland defense was hitting guys really hard. There were a lot of helmet-to-helmet hits in this game. There was an instance where a Pittsburgh player came off the field and he was bleeding from his ear after a big helmet-to-helmet hit, and that was very hard to watch to begin with. But, Juju Smith-Schuster left early in this game after a helmet-to-helmet hit with a concussion. James Conner, the Pittsburgh running back, he left early in the game after he re-aggravated his shoulder injury, the AC joint injury. So Pittsburgh was down a bunch of guys, and it's no wonder their offense struggled the entire night. But they just could not protect Mason Rudolph at all. It felt like almost every other play there was a Cleveland Brown defender in the backfield draped over Mason Rudolph. So their offense couldn't get going. But the thing that really amazed me last night wasn't the Browns' defense, it was the Browns' offense. Watching the game, because for the longest stretch, I tweeted this out during the game and I texted a friend about it. For the vast majority of this season, outside of the one game they played against Baltimore, the Browns have been a dysfunctional, horrific thing to watch on offense. They just can't get anything going. But in the first half, they looked great. Oh my gosh, they were getting big chunk plays downfield to Odell Beckham Jr. But the biggest thing that impressed me the most was when they got down to the red zone and when they got down to the goal line, they were punching it in. They were getting touchdowns. That's something we've seen them struggle with the entire season. Going back to last week when they had like 9 plays at the goal line for the Bills and came away with 3 points. They get down to the red zone and the goal line, 3 times in this game, and each time they come away with a touchdown. That's impressive to me for the Browns. I know that's setting the bar incredibly low, but still, good job by the Browns, getting down there and getting it in. And I was really stunned watching the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, just kind of giving up stuff, the big chunk plays downfield and the touchdowns. On the Browns' second touchdown when they went up 14-0, I mean, if I remember correctly, Jarvis Landry caught the touchdown pass, and he was wide open in the back of the end zone. It was stunning watching this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, just kind of get pushed around. And, watching this game, I was really reminded of the Browns of last year. A lot more daring-do kind of style of football, especially on that last touchdown pass that I'm seeing a replay of right now on my TV, where Baker just kind of tosses it up and his tight end just makes a great catch. that really reminded me of what the Browns were last season and what we really haven't seen this season. So, the Browns go up 21-7. It's late. Mason Rudolph's already thrown 4 interceptions. There's literally minutes left in the game. The game's been over for a while, in all honesty. And I decided, after the Browns scored that touchdown, I'm going to change the channel. I had seen on Twitter that there was a college football game going into overtime on ESPN, so I'd flipped over to that. And I was staring at my phone, scrolling through Twitter while I had that college football game on in the background. I see Twitter's melting down over something about the NFL game. So I'm like, oh, crud, I missed something. So I go back, and there's just mass chaos everywhere. And we should be sitting here praising what the Browns did in a game where they came out, kept their season alive, played good defense, and their offense looked good in certain spots for the first time all season. We should be sitting here talking about that. But we aren't gonna. We're going to be sitting here talking about the fight that happened at the end of the game. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest you go watch it and formulate your own opinions. I after watching it multiple times for about 30 to 40 minutes last night and a couple more times this morning, I am of the firm opinion that both sides are massively at fault. Myles Garrett hits the quarterback Mason Rudolph, takes him down to the ground, and the moment they hit the ground, Mason Rudolph just starts jacking with Myles Garrett's helmet, and you can never tell by the replay if part of Mason Rudolph's hand is stuck in Garrett's helmet, like Troy Aikman said is a possibility. I don't know. You can never see from the replay, or maybe something was said between the two after they hit the ground. Still don't know. I'm not trying to defend anybody in this situation because it's kind of indefensible what happened, but still. They start tussling on the ground. Rudolph is jacking with Garrett's helmet, and he's really kind of ripping and trying to almost rip it off his head. So Myles Garrett pops up, grabs Mason Rudolph by his face mask, and yanks this kid into the air by his face mask, then rips the helmet off. At this point, 2 Steelers offensive linemen have come and interjected themselves between the two and start pushing and shoving to keep these guys separated. Mason Rudolph goes back at Myles Garrett. From still frames and certain angles, it looks like maybe Rudolph is trying to get his helmet back, but he is going right at Myles Garrett, kind of aggressively. So Myles Garrett, in his infinite wisdom, swings his helmet at Mason Rudolph, hits him in the head with his own helmet. And, oh my gosh, everybody lost their freaking minds. Mason Rudolph gets hit. Thankfully, he is okay. Myles Garrett gets taken to the ground by the 2 Steelers offensive linemen. One of them was Maurkice Pouncey, who in his infinite wisdom, as soon as Garrett hits the ground, starts kicking and punching him in his head. It was just a complete cluster F of insanity. And then while all that's going on, Mason Rudolph is kind of standing off to the side looking around with his hands in the air. Then all of a sudden, Larry Ogunjobi, a Cleveland defender, comes from behind and just takes him to the ground. A blindside hit on a guy without a helmet. So referees are trying to pull him apart. Long story short, Maurkice Pouncey, Larry Ogunjobi, and Myles Garrett get ejected. And it was just a very tense ending to basically a meaningless game. It was a Thursday night game. It was already way out of hand. There was no need for any of this. And, this is what everybody's going to be talking about for the next 48 hours going into Sunday. Is the suspensions and all this and that. When we should be sitting here talking about the Browns. Oh my gosh. Breaking news. Actually, I'm seeing it on my TV. It's scrolling across the bottom on the little ticker thing. Myles Garrett has been suspended indefinitely for what he did last night. Suspension is for remainder of regular season and postseason at minimum. So the NFL has already taken action. Maurkice Pouncey, the Steelers center, suspended without pay for 3 games for what we saw last night. So Maurkice Pouncey also suspended. That's good in my opinion. Browns defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi suspended without pay for 1 game. Okay, so now we have the suspensions already down. I honestly thought we'd wait a couple days before we even got those. So Myles Garrett, his season is now done, which is something I agree with. So they're saying he's done for the season even if they make the playoffs. He will not play another down this season. That is fair. Marquise Pouncey will be done for 3 weeks. That's very good because the Browns and Steelers play again in 2 weeks. That's good. And Larry Ogunjobi for the blindside hit on Mason Rudolph, he's done for a week. So now we have all the suspensions, all the guesswork is done, and now we just got to live with the fallout. It was truly stunning to watch because we're not used to something like this happening in the NFL. Fights happen, and, guys tussling and all that, that's not anything new. Everything before the helmet swing, I think we've seen before in the NFL. I know guys have swung helmets at other guys before, but this was a primetime game. Everybody was watching. We're not used to that, and in a major moment for the NFL. Fights happen, and everybody knows that, but Myles Garrett could have seriously hurt Mason Rudolph. I mean, we're like 6 weeks removed from when Mason Rudolph was knocked out on the field by Earl Thomas, and we had to watch the athletic trainers carry his basically lifeless body to the locker room. And Myles Garrett, in his infinite wisdom, decides, hey, let me take a swing at his head with this helmet. If you've never been around one of these NFL helmets, they can do some serious damage. And Myles Garrett is a specimen of a human being, and he swung that thing with force. He could have seriously harmed, hell, even killed Mason Rudolph. He could have fractured his skull with that thing, and that is not a joke. He could have seriously hurt him. And Steve Smith, the former Panthers wide receiver, made a great point on the NFL Network's post-show that, if he had hit Mason Rudolph in, the certain spot in the temple, it could have knocked him out and caused serious brain damage. It really could have. We are very lucky that, Mason Rudolph was not seriously harmed in this. Because that could have just been horrifically awful. In the heat of the moment, Myles Garrett takes a swing at Mason Rudolph and just causes irreversible harm to the young man. And that would just be awful. I was going to come in and talk about what I think, the certain suspensions should be for the guys. I was going to say Myles Garrett should be done for the year, and that is now officially a thing. I was going to say Marquise Pouncey, the Steelers center, should get at least 2 games. That way he doesn't have to play the Browns again in 2 weeks. He got 3. That's fair. And I was going to say Larry Ogunjobi should get 1 game, and he did. I was also going to argue that Mason Rudolph should at least be fined, because I feel he was the instigator in all of this. I know not everybody likes that take so far this morning as I'm scrolling through NFL Twitter, but I think it's a fair take. We have to look at the entire situation, not just the helmet swing and the ensuing brawl afterwards. I felt Mason Rudolph was the instigator. He should at least be fined. I feel that is fair. But now we've got suspensions, and Myles Garrett is the leader on that defense. He is their best defensive player by a country mile. But the really sad thing is, if you had come up to me on the street, imagine I had never seen the game or saw the fight. If you had just come up to me on the street and described the game and then described the fight and then told me to guess the Browns player that had done this, Myles Garrett would literally be the last one I would have guessed. From everything I have heard, from the moment he got drafted to the Browns a couple of years ago, he has been nothing but a very mild-mannered guy, very cool-headed, and this just seems so out of character for him. You're telling me Myles Garrett, the guy who writes poetry, committed assault with a weapon during a primetime football game? That Myles Garrett? It just seems so out of the blue and just not normal. And I would really argue that, this is kind of something that has been building in Cleveland for a while. I think the Browns lack control. And that's not a dig on Baker Mayfield, who I think handled that post-game talk with Aaron Andrews about as great as you could have hoped for a player who said all the right things in the right moment on the fly. I think Baker Mayfield deserves a ton of props for that. I'm arguing that the head coach of this team does not have control. Remember, we are 2 weeks removed from a Browns player threatening to kill media members on Twitter after a game. And now we fast forward to Myles Garrett smacking Mason Rudolph upside the head with his helmet. I mean, this Browns team just feels like they lack control from their head coach. And it is just an ugly, ugly situation. This was an absolute black eye for the league. and like I said earlier, in a meaningless game. The game was over. It was well out of hand, and now this, and people are going to be talking about this for not just the rest of today, but the rest of the weekend, and this is probably still going to be a storyline going forward for the next couple of weeks, because I've heard through some NFL insiders that Mason Rudolph and his people are considering pressing charges against Myles Garrett for what happened. So this story isn't just going to end with the suspensions and the guys taking their time off. This storyline's probably going to continue for a couple more weeks, and this is literally the last thing the league needed, and this was just an ugly, ugly moment. And like I said earlier, no side is innocent, but I really wish we could have came in and talked about just the game. That we're going to praise the Browns for, keeping their season alive, keeping hopes that maybe sneaking into the playoffs alive. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the fight, and we're going to talk about the fact that their best defensive player is now suspended for the rest of the year. And this is a big blow for the Steelers as well, because their starting center is now done for 3 weeks when they need him the most, because they were in serious contention for a wild card, and that took a massive hit last night. So we're gonna try to move on and talk about other stuff, but this was just an ugly, ugly moment for the league. Very sad moment. All right, so that was a lot, especially with the breaking news happening in the middle of it, but we're going to move on to more of like a hybrid news section real quick, kind of an improv one, because I want to talk about what's happening Saturday in Atlanta, because it just feels so weird. Before we get into the previews, we're going to talk about the Colin Kaepernick workout on Saturday, because it just feels odd and weird. The NFL announced earlier in the week that Colin Kaepernick would be having a workout, and all 32 teams are invited to come watch him play. Workout, and it's basically like a combine workout for just one quarterback. Former head coaches Joe Philbin of the Dolphins and Hugh Jackson of the Bengals and Browns will be there. No, I'm sorry. Hugh Jackson never was the head coach of the Bengals. My bad. That was Marvin Lewis. My bad. Just the Browns. Anyway, so Colin Kaepernick is going to have this workout Saturday, and there are confirmed 11 teams will be there to watch him work out. And it just feels so odd. Mainly because it feels like the NFL was the only one who knew what was coming. You talk to anybody who has knowledge of the situation, and they all were blindsided by it. The teams sounded blindsided by it. Colin Kaepernick and his representation sounded blindsided by it. Eric Reed, who is on very close terms with Colin Kaepernick, says that he was blindsided by it as well. And it sounds like the league office was the only one who knew it was coming, and they sound like they're just hastily rushing through all of this. So what I'm trying to get at is I'm not sure what the league is trying to do here. It just feels so random. When you look at it on paper, hey, here's this quarterback who hasn't played in 3 years. Let's just randomly throw together a workout at the last minute in the middle of week 11 and invite all the teams, see who makes it. It doesn't make any sense no matter how you cut it. And I'm not sure what the league is trying to do here. I'm not sure what their play is. There was an article in The Athletic last night where I talked to a couple executives and in the front offices of a couple teams on the condition of anonymity, and they all said that, this stinks to high heaven of fishy. But they just can't figure out for the life of them what the ulterior motive of the league is in this situation. And I don't know either. But what I do know is that I think Colin Kaepernick can still play in this league. In fact, I think we've seen about at least 10 quarterbacks play this season that I think Colin Kaepernick is better than right now. So I don't think he'll get signed this Saturday. It's, week 11. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on in the league. Not everybody's focused on bringing in a guy who's going to come in and be a backup right now. I do think maybe this is a workout that's going to get him signed later. I think that he stands a good chance, if the workout goes well, to get signed next year. Because, like I said, I think he can still play, and there are going to be a lot of teams that are looking for quarterbacks or a backup quarterback next year. In fact, I still have such a high opinion on Colin Kaepernick, I wouldn't be upset if my Dallas Cowboys signed him. He would fit the offense that they're running perfectly, and he would come in and be kind of a veteran presence at the backup quarterback position. Because right now their backup is Cooper Rush, a guy who's been in the league less time than their starter Dak Prescott. I've always been of the opinion I like a veteran guy at the backup position, and Colin Kaepernick had a couple great years in San Francisco, went to a Super Bowl. That checks all the boxes for me, and I think he could fit the offense well. So 11 teams have committed to going there, and we're probably going to be seeing a lot of videos of it coming out on Saturday and people talking about it. So it's going to be a thing. So I thought it was at least worth talking about, but it's just weird. It just, like I said, it stinks to high heaven a fishy, but I don't know what the league's play is here. But we're all going to be sitting there watching it on Twitter on Saturday while college football's happening. I can guarantee that. So that's it for news. We're going to move on to the preview portion and try to get a little more lighthearted. We got 4 teams on a bye this week. Green Bay, the Giants, Seattle, and Tennessee all on a bye, so we will not talk about those teams. And we're already in a hole in our picks. We're already behind. We're 0-1 because of the result on Thursday night. We got to do better than we did last week. We got only 3 games right last week, so we're going to try and get better. And, we talked about the Cowboys a couple seconds ago. Why not roll with it? First game up on our preview, Dallas at Detroit. 5-4 Cowboys coming off that very humbling loss to the Vikings on Sunday Night Football that I'm still heated over. Coming to Detroit to take on the 3-5-1 Lions, who have lost 2 straight, and it sounds like Matthew Stafford will once again miss this game. Matt Patricia, the Lions head coach, released a statement about half an hour ago, 40 minutes ago, saying that it is likely that Matthew Stafford will miss this game again due to small fractures in his back, and that is a very serious thing to be dealing with. So it sounds like Jeff Driscoll will play again, and that is great news if you're a Cowboys fan, because if you watch that game he played against the Bears, Jeff Driscoll is not Matthew Stafford, and that sucks because the entirety of the Lions' offense is based around passing the ball and what Matthew Stafford is doing, and he's been quietly having a pretty good year. But Jeff Driscoll is a major drop off, and they have no running game in Detroit right now, so Jeff Driscoll is going to have to go out there and throw 40 passes in this game, most likely, to give his team a chance. And we've talked about at length at how the Lions defense is terrible, and they're going to have to step up and try to keep the team in the game, because Jeff Driscoll is going to have to put up some points against this Cowboys offense that can move the ball well, that can score. That's one of the best offenses in the league when the coaching staff isn't getting in the way. So Jeff Driscoll's going to have to make a play. But speaking of the Cowboys now, we've mentioned it before a couple times. Dallas can beat up on the bad teams. Dallas is 3-1 against teams that are below 500, which the Lions currently are. And without Matthew Stafford, the Lions are a bad team. They just are. Dak Prescott is, playing at a very high level right now, and I think he should deserve more MVP talk. He's playing arguably some of the best football of his career consistently. And I would honestly argue he's playing better right now than he did his rookie year when he went 13-3. He's playing some really great football right now. But for the Cowboys, their Achilles heel has been on defense, but, with Jeff Driscoll out and there's no running game from the Lions, I'm not concerned about it at all for the Cowboys. My main question is, how will the Dallas coaching staff mess this game up for the Dallas offense? They seem to do it almost every week. They'll find a way to do it this one. We're not quite sure yet, but they'll find a way. Don't you worry. I think Dallas wins this one handily, especially with Matthew Stafford not playing. Who knows how long he's going to be out for? He might be done for the year because, back injuries are no joke. They really aren't. And they can really, shave years off a quarterback's life. Career. But if Jeff Driscoll will play, Dallas wins this one handily. On paper, 2 weeks ago, this would have been a great game to watch. A really good quarterback duel with what the Lions were doing offensively with Stafford and what Dallas is doing with Prescott. This would have been a fun game to watch, but since Stafford's not there, I wouldn't recommend watching this one. Dallas wins this one handily, in my opinion, and we're going to move on to another game. Bills at Dolphins. The 6-3 Bills going to Miami to take on the 2-7 and streaking Dolphins. I'm telling you. Watch out. Watch out for them Dolphins. They've won 2 straight now. Don't you count out the Dolphins just yet. Uh, Statistically, the Bills are a good defense. They're third in the league in total D with 304.2 yards per game. They're third in scoring D with 16.7 points per game. On paper they're good. You've seen them at times that they played really good. But the problem with the Bills has never been their defense. The problem with the Bills is their offense. It leaves a literal metric ton to be desired when you watch it play. They're 26th in the league in points per game on offense, averaging 19.3 points per game. And you saw them struggle mightily last week against the Browns to score, 14 points. This Bills team has a habit of, struggling heavily against bad teams. But speaking of the Dolphins are at the bottom of every statistical category on offense and scoring offense and pass yards per game and rush yards per game, and then on defense and total yards per game and points they give up. They're not at the bottom, but they're in like the bottom 3 or 4, so they've been floating around there the entire season. And despite all of that, they've won 2 straight against a Jets team that was very flat and a Colts team without Brian Hoyer. So they're not world beaters, but they're playing their arguably best football these last couple weeks. The last time these two teams played, it was week 7, and the Bills had to pull off a fourth quarter comeback to win. The Bills had to score 22 points in the fourth quarter to win that game. So this game will be a tight one, just like that, in my opinion. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter. It's going to come down to the last 5 minutes. Because that's just who the Bills are. They play down to these bad teams. Or maybe I should correct that. Maybe the Bills aren't playing down, but they're just playing a team that's about the same. I'm really not sold on the Bills anymore as a team. This game will be tight with 3 minutes left, and I really won't be stunned if the Bills are down by 8 points going into the fourth quarter. That just feels like who they are as a team. And I'm going to take the Bills to win. I don't feel confident in that, though. They won earlier in the year, but that was in Buffalo, and this time it's in Miami. And Miami's feeling good about themselves. They've won 2 straight. They're feeling confident. And the Bills are coming off that horrific loss to the Browns. I would not be stunned if the Dolphins won this game. That's not praise for the Dolphins. That's just how low my opinion is of the Bills right now. But I think they win this game. But I wouldn't be stunned if Miami did it. All right, moving on to, in my opinion, game of the weekend. I know everybody here is looking forward to it. I know you've all been waiting for me to talk about this one all week long. Oh, yeah. I know what you're thinking. And yes, it is that game. I'm talking the Jets at Washington. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The 2-7 Jets at 1-8 Washington. Jets got a win last week against the Giants. They're feeling good about themselves. And Washington is 1-8 coming off a bye week. They've lost 3 straight. We got some news about Washington, though. Dwayne Haskins, their quarterback, has been given the nod to start for the rest of the season. So these next 6 games are all Dwayne Haskins, and that's a good sign in my opinion. That shows there's progress that has been made, because Washington, before that we've talked about, has been very uncommittal towards Dwayne Haskins being their starter. But it sounds like even if Case Keenum and Colt McCoy get healthy, Dwayne Haskins is going to be the guy. That's good. If you're pulling for Dwayne Haskins like I am, that's a good sign. Also, it sounds like Darius Geis will be back in the lineup for the team, and interim head coach, I should say, Bill Callahan said he's going to expect a heavy dose for running back Darius Geis. And they're going to need him in this one, because the Jets have the number 2 rush D in the NFL, giving up 81.9 rush yards per game. And if you've been paying attention to Washington and the way they run their offense since Bill Callahan took over, all they do is run the football. That's the vast majority of their plays, is just run with Peterson. That's why their games are so short. These last couple of weeks with the Washington football team, their games have been, well under 3 hours, just because they're running the ball so much and the clock's draining so much. It's become a running joke that they're almost running out the season just to get out of it. But, yeah. So, speaking of Washington offense, they're one of the worst in the league. They're 30th in total offense with 259.1 yards per game, and they're dead last in points per game in the league, scoring 12 points a game. In fact, Washington has gone 13 full quarters without scoring a touchdown. That's 4 full games. No, wait, no. I'm sorry, 3 full games, I should say. I did my math wrong. 3 full games without scoring a touchdown. All they've done is kick field goals. But they're playing a team with the Jets, and you never know what you're going to get. They might score 31 points like they did against the Giants last week, or they might lay a complete egg like they did against the Dolphins the week before. You just never know what you're getting with these Jets. The Jets are number 32 in total offense with 231.3 yards per game, and 30th in points per game with 14.4. So they're about just as bad as this Washington offense has been. But I think a very interesting nugget about this game, the Jets are 0-4 in away games, and Washington is 0-4 in home games. This game is in Washington, so something's got to give. But I'm gonna take the Jets to win this one. Both teams are so bad, just so awful to watch this year that I think you could literally blindfold me and have me throw a dart at a board, land on a team's name, and I'd be fine with that one. It's a coin flip. They're both just so horrendously bad and awful. But I'm going to take the Jets to win this one in the game of the weekend. I can't even say it with a straight face. Moving on to a fun game, actually. You got the 4-5 Jacksonville Jaguars coming off their bye week, and they're going to Indianapolis to take on the 5-4 Colts, who have lost 2 straight. Nice little AFC South divisional matchup. This is actually a game of returns. Nick Foles is back in the starting lineup for the Jacksonville Jaguars for the first time since week 1 after breaking his collarbone in, the first quarter after throwing a touchdown pass. He's back, and that's great news for Jacksonville because the last time we saw this Jags team was in London and their offense imploded in the fourth quarter with like 2 or 3 turnovers. So he's back, so we'll see what the Jags offense is like. Maybe DJ Chark could get more involved with the offense. He's been kind of missing the last couple weeks. But that's good news for Jacksonville. We'll see how rusty he is because, like I said, we haven't seen him since week 1. So we'll see how he's looking. But it's not just the Jacksonville quarterback's back. It sounds like, barring a setback, the Colts quarterback will be back, Jacoby Brissett, after missing last week with an injury. And they really missed him. Brian Hoyer, in my opinion, is the reason why they lost that game. 3 interceptions, and the Dolphins, made him pay off those interceptions, scoring points. So Jacoby will be back, and that's great news. We'll see how healthy he looks Sunday in this game. But in my opinion, what's going to determine this game is how rusty these quarterbacks look. If Nick Foles is coming out and missing throws, and the same goes for Jacoby, that's bad news for both offenses. But the good news for the Jags is, their rushing offense has been getting work done this year. They're the number 9 rushing offense in the league with 129.6 rush yards per game. So we could see a very big dose of Leonard Fournette in this game. But I just have more faith in Jacoby coming back sooner. He's played in more games this year, so he's less rusty than Nick Foles is. I just have more faith in that than, Nick Foles coming right back from a collarbone injury and throwing 3 touchdowns to win the game. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to take the Colts to win this one, but like we have mentioned before, every Colts game this year comes down to 1 possession. So it's going to be a game, with like a minute left to go is what I'm getting at. It's not going to be a blowout by either team, and it's going to come down to the last play. So whoever has the ball last wins, I guess. It won't be a high-scoring affair, but you get what I'm saying. I'll take the Colts to win. I just trust Jacoby Brissett coming back sooner. He's played more this year. It just makes more sense in my mind. All right, moving on to our next game. We got 3-6 Denver Broncos going to Minnesota to take on the 7-3 Vikings. The Vikings' pass defense got really exposed last week against the Cowboys. If you were watching that game, Prescott was tearing them up left and right with Amari Cooper and Randall Cobb, and if it wasn't for the Dallas coaching staff Prescott probably would have won the game, in my opinion. I still think that. But thankfully, they're playing against a offense in the Broncos that's kind of more one-dimensional around the run. And they're playing Brandon Allen. He's not Dak Prescott, is what I'm getting at. Brandon Allen's going to be making his second start this week after winning, 2 weeks ago against the Browns. The Browns secondary, made Noah Fant look great. Courtland Sutton look good. This Vikings defense is a much different kind of monster. The Vikings defense gives up 18.2 points per game. That's fifth best in the league. So they're much, much better than what the Browns were on defense. And I'm not expecting a 75-yard catch and run by Noah Fant in this game for a touchdown. So it'll be interesting to see what the Broncos offense looks like. We haven't seen them in a while with Brandon Allen again. I kind of feel like he's just a placeholder for when Drew Lock finally gets healthy so they can see what he looks like. But who knows what Brandon Allen can do? Maybe he'll come out and shine a little bit. Maybe he'll come out and expose the Vikings pass defense again. I don't believe that, but who knows? Anything's possible. Coincidentally, the Vikings are 4-0 at home this season. And, the Vikings are good this year. And when the Vikings are good, that place gets incredibly loud, especially late in the season, and becomes impossible to play in. And you're putting in a guy in his second start, first road start for the guy. In that kind of environment, it's going to be rough. I think the Vikings win this one and go to 5-0 at home for the season. That's just what I think. I think Minnesota takes this one. It'll probably be fairly one-sided. All right, moving on to our next one. New Orleans at Tampa Bay. New Orleans had that shocking loss last week to the Falcons, and Tampa Bay got a big win against the Cardinals. So opposite ends of the spectrum. How will the Saints bounce back in this game? They gave up 6 sacks. 6 to the Cardinals. And they're going to be playing the guy Shaquille Barrett on the Tampa Bay defensive line, who is tied for the league lead in sacks with 11.5. So how are they going to protect Drew Brees in this game? The Saints have now 3 games on the season. Speaking of their offense, they have 3 games on the season this year where they didn't score a touchdown. Dallas earlier in the year, Jacksonville in the middle of the year, and Atlanta last week. So they're 2-1 in those games. But what I'm getting at is it isn't a new thing where, the Saints just suddenly go cold and can't score a touchdown in a game. We've seen it now 3 times this year, so you can argue it's a pattern. And you could really say that those defenses weren't world beaters. The Dallas defense has struggled all year. Jacksonville's kind of been a middling defense, and the Falcons have been a bad defense for most of the year. And those were the 3 teams that held them without a touchdown. But the good news for the Saints offense, they're playing the Buccaneers defense that is one of the worst in the league. They're dead last in scoring defense. They average giving up 31 points per game. So you could argue the Saints offense should bounce back in this game. They should on paper. Get Alvin Kamara going more, get Michael Thomas involved just like he did last week. And everything should work. But this will not be a cakewalk because the Buccaneers have a good offense despite their record. The Buccaneers have the number 7 total offense with 385.6 yards per game and are averaging 28.9 points per game. That's 3rd best in the league, behind only the Patriots and the Ravens. So they're not a pushover. This will not be a cakewalk for the Saints. The last time these 2 teams played, the Saints embarrassed Jameis Winston in this offense. You got to remember, that was right after the Buccaneers beat the Rams, and everybody was so high up on Jameis Winston that he was playing good for a couple weeks, and everybody was saying, oh, he's playing it into his new contract. I'm people. I said that. And then they played the Saints, and everything went off the rails, and the Buccaneers offense looked lost, and Bruce Arians was out there calling players soft. So maybe it'll be like that again. Maybe the Saints just have a formula drawn up on defense to take care of this Buccaneers offense. Or maybe they won't. Anything is possible in a divisional rivalry game. Anything is possible. But I think the Saints win this one. I've ridden the Saints all year long. I trust Sean Payton. And last week, it just felt like a fluke game. It did. The Saints have been good at protecting Breeze all year long. They gave up 6 sacks to the Falcons, and it just felt like everything going wrong for the Saints. It felt like a fluke game. So that's what I'm going to chalk it up to. But if they come out and struggle again like they did against Atlanta last week, if it's similar in that regard, I would start raising alarm bells, because then you would have 2 straight games against subpar competition where you struggle. This is the Saints. They aren't the Bills. Get it together now, y'all. Once again, I'm taking the Saints to win, and we're going to stay in the NFC South for this next one. You got the Falcons, who are feeling great about themselves right now. The 2-7 Falcons, who have now won a game, are going to Carolina to take on the 5-4 Panthers, who lost a heartbreaker at the end to the Packers. They've lost coming off that tough loss. So what version of the Falcons are we going to get? Are we going to get, the Falcons that we saw for most of the year before their bye week, a defense that is, getting guys open left and right and, blowing assignments everywhere? Or are we going to see the team that bullied the Saints into submission? Two complete opposite ends of the spectrum here. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get here. But the good news for Atlanta, Brian Hill in the last game against New Orleans, he had an okay game. He had like 20 rushes for 89 yards against a good Saints D. But the Carolina defense has the number 29 rush D. They've been getting gashed by the run all season long. They're averaging giving up 136.7 rush yards per game. So does Brian Hill have a big day? He is expected to start in this game if Devontae Freeman can't. And it sounds like he might not. So keep an eye on that one. Atlanta has struggled to get a running game going all year long, so maybe they get one going in this game. That's where Carolina defense has struggled all season long. They're strong in every other facet of their game. But for the Falcons, on defense, I've talked about them being bad for most of the year. They were great against the Saints. They had 6 sacks. They had 7 going into that game, so now they have 13 on the year. They need to find a way to get that pass rush going again. And, get after Kyle Allen. He's had a fumbling issue, so get after him. Try to get some turnovers. Falcons have 13 on the year. That's one of the worst in the league. You know which team in the NFL has the most sacks this season? As of right now? It's the Carolina Panthers with 36. So, the Atlanta Falcons' simple offensive objective: protect Matt Ryan at all costs. He is coming back from that ankle injury from, a couple weeks ago. So maybe he's a little gingerly. Just protect him. That's all I'm saying. Just protect Matt Ryan at all costs. For the Panthers offense, I don't think this Falcons offense is, anything crazy that you're going to have to go out and, put up insane numbers to beat them. Just, run Christian McCaffrey a lot. And, Kyle Allen makes a play or two in the second half, and everything should be okay, in my opinion. And I'm taking the Panthers to win this one. We've seen the Falcons be bad for most of the year, and that's what we've known them to be consistently, so that's what I'm expecting to see consistently. If they come out and win this game, I'd be stunned. 2 straight weeks beating NFC South teams, that'd be crazy for the Falcons. I'm taking the Panthers to win, though. Moving on to, and I'm serious when I say it this time, this one's actually game of the weekend. This isn't a bit. This is real. You got the 6-3 Houston Texans coming off their bye week. They've won 2 straight. Going to Baltimore to take on the 7-2 Ravens, who have won 5 straight. I'm serious. This is going to be a great game. I'm so excited. This is a matchup between 2 good quarterbacks. And the last time these 2 men played against each other was college football. When Lamar Jackson and his Louisville Cardinals went to Clemson to take on Deshaun Watson and his Clemson Tigers. Both teams were ranked in the top 5 in polls, and it lived up to the hype. 8 total touchdowns, over 1,000 total yards, and Deshaun Watson's team was able to eke out a victory against Lamar Jackson's team. Now that season, Lamar took the loss, but it ended pretty well for both teams. Deshaun Watson and his team go on to win the national championship over Alabama, and Lamar Jackson wins the Heisman Trophy. So, not all bad, all things considered. That was 2016. 2016, 2017, if I'm doing my math correctly. That was then. This is now. Deshaun took round 1. Let's get ready for round 2 in the NFL. And this time it's on Lamar's home turf and not Deshaun's. So things could be different. But everybody's going to sit here and hype up the quarterbacks. But in my opinion, the real story of this game is going to be the running backs. The Ravens are the number 1 rushing offense in the league. They're averaging 197.2 rush yards per game. But the Texans are the number 3 rush defense in the league. Surprisingly, I didn't know that. They're averaging 84.1 rush yards per game. And coincidentally enough, the Houston Texans defense has not allowed an opposing player to rush for over 100 yards since week 17 of 2017, when Frank Gore did it for the Colts. They've gone nearly 2 full seasons without letting a guy rush for 100 yards. That's crazy, man. That's real crazy. And you know, the same could be said about the Ravens rush defense versus the Texans rush offense. The Ravens have the number 8 rush D with averaging giving up 91.2 rush yards per game. And they're going to need it because the Texans are the number 4 rushing offense that are averaging 142.8 rush yards per game. So, you know, both teams like to run the football, and, you know, that's how they work with their offenses, and both defenses know how to stop the run. So something's got to give in this game. But speaking on more of a overall issue, both teams have top-tier offenses. The Texans have the number 4 total offense with 396.7 yards per game and averaged 26.4 points per game. That's 8th best in the league in points per game. But the Ravens have the number 2 total offense with 421.7 yards per game. They're one of 3 teams in the league that are averaging over 400 yards a game. And they're averaging 33.3 points per game. That's best in the league. Whew, this is going to be a great game. This is really going to come down to the fourth quarter, in my opinion. Probably the last 3 minutes. And in all honesty, I really think this is going to be whoever has the football last wins the game kind of thing. But it's going to be a matchup of great quarterbacks, and that's what everybody's going to hype it up as. And deservedly so. These guys have played great football. I'm going to take the Ravens to win it. I just feel like their offense is just so much to handle. The Texans' offense is really great too, and they got plenty of weapons, but there's just so much going on in that Ravens offense. There's 3 Heisman Trophy winners on the Ravens offense. Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson, Robert Griffin. And they've talked about running out the Heisman package again this week. They did it against the Bengals, but think about that. Lamar Jackson, Robert Griffin, and Mark Ingram lining up in the same backfield. How does that not give a defense nightmares? That's scary. But I'm going to take the Ravens to win in a very close, tight one. It should be a really fun game. Moving on to our next one, the last of our early games. I think this game could also be pretty fun, too. It was the last time these 2 teams played. You got the 3-6-1 Arizona Cardinals, who have lost 3 straight, going to San Francisco to take on the now very mortal 8-1 San Francisco 49ers. You could argue that Arizona has maybe played its best offense of the year these last 2 weeks. They're averaging 26 points per game these last 2 weeks. And Kyler Murray has combined for 565 yards and 5 touchdowns these last 2 weeks. And that includes the 25 points he put up on the San Francisco defense. You know, that's going back, you know, looking at the San Francisco game on that Thursday night on Halloween and then the Tampa Bay game last weekend. Cardinals offense really feels like it's turned a corner and has looked great and fun to watch. They're exciting, they're high flying, they're high scoring, they're fun. But speaking to the 49ers now, you know, on Monday night when they played the Seahawks, the 49ers could not protect Jimmy G. He was just under constant pressure the entire night from Jadeveon Clowney, and he was feeling the pressure, and you could tell by watching him play. Jadeveon Clowney was a one-man wrecking crew. And that 49ers offensive line that had played well for most of the year got beat a lot. The problem is they're playing the Cardinals, and the Cardinals have a man that goes by the name of Chandler Jones on that defensive line, who is also tied for the league lead in sacks with 11.5. So the 49ers have to find a way to protect Jimmy Garoppolo, first and foremost, before they get anything going. They got to find a way to not let him get sacked 5 times and get hit what felt like 15. The San Francisco defense has been leaky lately. Over the entire season, they've averaged giving up 14.3 points per game. That's second best in the league. But these last 2 weeks, they've given up 25 points to the Cardinals and then 27 points on Monday night to the Seahawks these past 2 weeks. So, they're still playing good defensive football. They've just been giving up more points than they have the entire season. Before, these last 2 weeks, the most points they gave up to a team was 20 points to the Steelers in like week 3 or 4. Like, this 49ers defense has played good, but they've been getting beat a little bit these past 2 weeks. The 49ers experienced a lot of turnovers Monday night, and that was something that they struggled with earlier in the season, so Jimmy Garoppolo needs to hold on to the football better. But those receivers need to catch the ball and hang on to it. There were a lot of big drops on Monday night. For the 49ers offense, a big question is, will Emmanuel Sanders play? He's dealing with the injury that he left early from Monday night, and it sounds like George Kittle, their tight end, probably won't play. So those are big blows to this 49ers offense. But I still have a lot of faith in that defense. I know it plays hard-nosed football, and I love watching it. I'm going to take the 49ers to win this one. I think this is going to be a lot closer than people think. A lot of people aren't talking about this game, but I think it can be really fun. It was on Thursday night when they played on Halloween. So it should be fun again. But I'm going to take the 49ers to win it. All right, moving on to the first of our... Oh, actually, no. Arizona-San Francisco was the first of our late games. My mistake. I apologize. So moving on to the rest of the late games, you got the 0-9 Cincinnati Bengals going on the road to take on the 5-4 Oakland Raiders, who have won 2 straight, and they're coming off their bye week. The Bengals are just awful. They're at the bottom of every statistical category. They're a lot like the Arizona Cardinals from last year. Just awful to even talk about. So we won't talk about this game too much. The Raiders are playing pretty good football right now. They have the number 8 rushing offense in the league, averaging 129.9 rush yards per game, and are going up against the worst rush D in the league, and the Bengals, who are giving up an average of 173 rush yards per game. So look for Josh Jacobs to have a pretty big day, in my opinion. Derek Carr has been playing really great football this season, some of the best of his career. He's just playing really good, consistently good football. And once again, this Bengals defense is awful, 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 awful. So maybe Derek Carr has a big day too. Maybe a couple touchdowns. Who knows? I don't want to talk about this game too much because it just looks so one-sided, and it probably will be that. And I'm taking the Raiders to win this one. Bengals are in the driver's seat for that first overall pick. Who knows what they're going to do with it? But it's just a bad year for the Bengals. It's just a bad year. Raiders win, and we're moving on to an actual competitive game. You got the 8-1 Patriots going on the road to take on the 5-4 Philadelphia Eagles, who have won 2 straight. Both teams are coming off a bye week, and I think that's very important to note for this game. Last time we saw the Patriots, they were getting run over by Lamar Jackson and the rest of that Ravens offense. So, my hypothesis that is how you beat this Patriots defense seems to be holding true. You just got to run at them. But not everybody has a running game like the Ravens do. Philadelphia has the number 11 rush offense with 127.3 rush yards per game, but that took a hit because Darren Sproles suffered a season-ending injury. The Eagles put out a statement about that. So he is not going to play in this game or the rest of the season, but they're working out a guy by the name of Jay Ajayi this Friday, today. And if the workout goes well, maybe he signs with the team and maybe he plays this Sunday. He played with the Eagles during that Super Bowl run, if I remember correctly. So he's used to trucking the Patriots in a big-time moment. Boom, roasted. So what I'm saying is, you got to get these Patriots moving sideline to sideline and just run at them. That's how you beat them, in my opinion. Get them a heavy dose of Miles Sanders, the running back from Philadelphia. But the problem for the Eagles isn't their running game. There's talk that Alshon Jeffrey, their wide receiver, might not play in this game. And with Deshaun Jackson done for the year, we might go back to, the Eagles wide receiver core being led by J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that's never good. um, so if they get depleted at the wide receiver core again, maybe their entire offense has to revolve around the run to get anything going. The Pats defense has been good all year, except for the Baltimore game, like I mentioned. They're number one in total D with 249.3 yards per game, and they're averaging giving up 10.9 points per game. That's best in the league. But they were playing those bad teams, and now we're getting into the portion of their schedule. They're playing tougher teams like, Baltimore that they lost to, and Philadelphia, who isn't a world beater, but they're better than most of the teams the Patriots have played. And the Cowboys are coming up. That's another mobile quarterback that likes to run the football. It can be interesting to see what happens with this Patriots defense. But I think an interesting thing to look for is, will the Patriots offense continue to struggle? They were having problems before the bye week, especially in that game against Baltimore. Will it come out and still look funny? Who knows? Maybe they fix things over the bye week. But I was sitting down to write the notes, and I'm like, Bill Belichick had an extra week to prepare for this game. He's been studying the Eagles nonstop, and he'll be ready to, drop a bomb on this Eagles team. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, Bill Belichick had an extra week. So did Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson is one of the best coaches in the league. He beat this Patriots team in a Super Bowl with this Eagles team, 2 years ago when he had an extra week to prepare. So, if you're expecting, Bill Belichick to come out with this masterful scheme, so could Doug Peterson. This game could be a close one, in my opinion. It could be a fun, interesting one. I really want to see what the Patriots look like coming out of their bye week. Will running the football still work, and will their offense still struggle? That's my keys for the game. But I'm going to take the Patriots to win it. I've ridden them all year. I'm going to keep riding them till the wheels fall off the train. And we're moving on to Sunday Night Football. Not a very appetizing one this week on Sunday Night Football, but it could be very close and come down to the wire. You got the 4-5 Chicago Bears, who won last week over a hapless Detroit Lions team, going on the road to take on the 5-4 Rams, who lost, a heartbreaker to the Steelers last week. This is a matchup of dysfunctional offenses. My opinions on Mitchell Trubisky and the Bears offense are well known. They're a broken mess, and the Rams are a team in transition. They were built around Todd Gurley, and now he's just kind of a random guy on their roster. So they got to find a way to move the football and score points. So both of these offenses are not good, in my opinion. That's putting it mildly. So the game, in my opinion, is going to come down to defense. That's what's going to decide this game. The Bears D, despite everything that has happened this season, they're the number 9 total defense with 327.3 yards per game, and they're averaging giving up 17.4 points per game. That's 4th best in the league. So their defense is still playing pretty good football. Well, the Rams' defense is still playing good football, in my opinion. They're the number 11 overall D, sorry about that, with 331 yards per game, and they're averaging giving up 21.2 points per game. That's tied for 14th best, so that's around average. These last 2 weeks with the Bears offense, they've had, horrendous first halves. The game against Philadelphia where they put up like 9 yards of total offense, and there was the game against the Lions last week where they only got something going on the last drive. So will it be a third straight week where the Bears struggle in the first half offensively and dig themselves into a massive hole? I trust Sean McVay and Jared Goff more. I know their offense has really struggled. I just feel like they'll find a way to get guys open. Cooper Kupp had 0 receptions last week. Not receptions, 0 yards. So expect him to have a much bigger day in this game. Cooper Kupp goes silent. That's not normal. He was a guy that was averaging like 100 yards a game at one point. I just feel like I trust the Rams more offensively. I trust nothing about the Bears. I don't trust Matt Nagy. I especially don't trust Mitch Trubisky. But I'm expecting this to be a very low-scoring game. Probably like a final score of 17-14. Very low scoring. Probably comes down to a last-second field goal to win the game to avoid overtime sort of thing. Where neither offense plays really good and the defenses are kind of showing out. It'll be a very low-scoring defensive struggle on Sunday Night Football. And I'm going to take the Rams to win it. I just don't trust Mitch Trubisky one bit. Not for one cockamamie second. I don't trust that man. to win in a big game on the road against a good opponent. I don't trust it. So that's Sunday Night Football. Let's talk about Monday Night Football for a second, because this game is very interesting. You got the 6-4 Kansas City Chiefs going on the road to take on the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 4-6. But this game isn't going to be played in LA. This game is going to be played in Mexico City, part of the NFL's international series. So we were supposed to get this game last year, not between the Chiefs and the Chargers, but between the Chiefs and the Rams. But the field conditions in Mexico City were so just awful that they had to move the game at the last minute to Los Angeles, to the Rams venue. But it sounds like everything's going to be good to go for Monday night, and these two teams will play. This is kind of a must-win game for both of these teams. The Chargers took that heavy loss to the Raiders, and they're trying to keep hope alive for their season. And they need this game to stay alive. The Chiefs, they need this game to keep up their playoff expectations, because coming into the season, everybody said the Patriots are the best team in the AFC, and then the Chiefs are the number 2. Well, we're almost at the postseason time, and now it's starting to look like the Chiefs might be the 3rd or maybe even 4th best team in the AFC. They got to start stacking some wins together, not just to keep pace for a potential bye and a number 2 overall seed, or hell, even a 1st overall seed. They got to start stacking wins to make sure they win their division. Raiders play the Bengals this weekend. That should be a win. So think about that. The Oakland Raiders are going to be sitting there 6-4, and if the Chiefs find a way to drop this game, it'll be very bad. These Raiders are not going away. I can promise you that. And these Chargers aren't a pushover. That's the problem. They are not a pushover, despite what they've looked like for most of the year. The Chargers have been quietly having a good year on defense, despite everything that's happened. They're ranked 6th in total defense with 318.3 yards per game, and they're averaging giving up 19.4 points per game. That's 8th best in the league. Surprisingly, despite all the injuries they've had and everything that's happened with this Chargers team, I was very surprised when I saw that. So their defense could step up in a big way and try to limit the big plays from the Chiefs. But last week the Chiefs played a good defense, and it was a return to form for them. Patrick Mahomes had over 400 yards. The big chunk plays finally returned to the offense. So it'll be interesting to see how this game comes out and what it looks like. Can the Chiefs move the ball up and down the field? But for the Chargers, speaking to their offense again, they have to do a better job of protecting Phillip Rivers. He was clearly unsettled when they played the Raiders last week with Max Crosby all over him in his lap the entire game. He was unsettled and couldn't get steady. They got to do a better job of protecting him in this game, because if you got guys coming in constantly and they're getting constant pressure on Phillip Rivers, it could be a long night for the Chargers offense again. So just protect Phillip Rivers as best you can. This Chiefs defense has not played good. They'll do these weird spurts where they'll show signs of being good, and then they'll go back to just letting people run all over them. Speaking of running over them, Kansas City has 31st ranked rush defense in the league. That's second to last. They're averaging giving up 148.1 rush yards per game, and Melvin Gordon has looked better the last 2 weeks. Remember, the Chargers had 100 rush yards at halftime against the Raiders last week. So maybe give him a good, healthy dose of Melvin Gordon up the middle and give him some Austin Eckler razzle-dazzle to keep him off balance. Like I said before, both teams could really use this game, but I'm going to take Kansas City to win this one. I trust Patrick Mahomes. He's a great quarterback. He's going to put up numbers. He's going to score points. It's going to be on the Chargers to try and keep up. The Chargers split the series with Kansas City last year. Each team won a game. Like I said, anything is possible in a divisional rivalry game. But both teams really could use this win. Could really use this game. So we'll see what happens. That's it for our podcast today. Got through all the games and all the news and all the stuff. Wow, what a show. So, next time we talk, it'll be Tuesday. We'll recap all the games we just previewed. I guess we could also mention the Kaepernick workout if anything interesting happens. I know that'll be a thing on NFL Twitter on Saturday. So keep your eyes peeled for that, I guess. So, like I said, next time we talk will be Tuesday. We'll recap all of these games, and then we'll preview next Thursday night football's game between the Colts and the Texans. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you Tuesday. Bye.